Hello teachers, it's good to be with you again as we talk about preparing a lesson to teach Matthew 7, 1 through 5. This lesson deals with the topic of teaching us to judge righteously. One of the things we can do in our classes to increase student participation is to use students working in pairs, small groups of students, or an individual student preparing something to present to the class. And this lesson has a really great way to use these kinds of activities that will increase student participation. But to have the most success with them, we want to lay the foundation carefully in our lesson so that the small group work or the pair and share or the individual preparing for a class presentation will be most successful. So let me show you what I mean. So if you scroll down, or as we scroll down through this lesson, you'll see that we start off with some scenarios here. There's 4 of them. 3 of them I would adjust a little bit, and 1 of them I would leave the way that it is. And the reason that we're adjusting is we want to give our students the greatest success and lay the foundation for the group work that they're going to be doing later in the lesson. So this first scenario says, someone invites you to a party where many teenagers will be using substances against the word of wisdom. Rather than be generic there, why not just say you're invited to go to a party where there's going to be drinking? I think all of our students can relate to that. It makes the scenario very realistic, which will be better for the group work that we're doing later. The second scenario, someone who lives according to different standards than you wants to be a close friend. But let's fill in the blank there a little bit. Let's make it more specific. Someone who has a lot of tattoos and piercings wants to be your friend. We've all seen people like that. Some of us feel more comfortable around people like that, some of us less, but we're going to maybe use that as an example in this lesson that we can wrestle with a little bit. A member of your ward does different activities on the Sabbath day than your family does. Be careful here because you probably have a variety of students and families that feel different activities on the Sabbath are appropriate. But maybe a recent example that you could insert here is a family in your ward wants to watch the Super Bowl on Sunday, but your family doesn't do that. Or vice versa. Switch that scenario around. And so that would be, again, that I think students would relate to. They're on one side of that issue or the other, and it's gray area. This last one I think is pretty good how it is. You have a friend who looks at pornography. There's your scenarios. Maybe you add a 5th or a 6th scenario that the kids could generate. That's going to increase the relevance and help students participate a little bit more. Then as you're going down, you're going to spend some time searching for the principles from Matthew 7 that will help you. So you start with Matthew 7:1. There's a great quote here that's going to help you identify some principles. And then you talk about a moat. There's a moat. You talk about a beam. There's the beam. And read some more scriptures. And then the students will identify, the class will identify principles. You need to do this because, again, this is going to lay the groundwork for our group activity, whether that be pairs, small groups, or individual students preparing a presentation for the class. So here are some of the principles that you want to make sure that you identify at this point in the lesson. I would skip these next few questions, not because they're not good questions, but because we're going to do this a little bit later with the scenarios, and I think the scenario questions are good, so I feel like it's a little bit redundant. So I would skip over this and jump right into the next activity, which is practice applying the principles of righteous judgment. Notice the box. We don't skip the boxes. Consider dividing students into pairs or small groups for this activity. So if you've got a big class, small groups would be great. Groups of 2 or 3 or 4 students tackling one of those scenarios that you listed on the board or listed as a class at the beginning of the lesson. If you have a medium-sized class, a pair and share would be great. Again, it gives you the option of choosing the scenario, students choosing the scenario, or maybe the teacher chooses and you just assign them. So if you came up with 5 or 6 scenarios at the beginning of class, that's going to allow you to do pairs. Also, it's okay if some of the pairs have the same scenario. They're probably going to come up with slightly different approaches, and that would be really instructive and really valuable as well. If you have a small class, you can still do this activity by having individual students take a scenario. So if you've got 2 or 3 or 4 students, that's fine. Each one of them gets a scenario, and they're going to go through and answer these questions. And here are the questions. What righteous judgments would you make in this situation? What judgments should you be careful not to make? Following the Savior's teachings, how could you be fair and merciful in the judgments you make? And how might remembering your own sins and weaknesses help in this situation? So there's their 4 questions. Put those on a PowerPoint slide. Write those questions on the board so students can refer to it as they're doing group work, or put them on a slip of paper that they can use. But if you're starting with good scenarios, if you have searched the scriptures and the quotes of living prophets and found the principles of judging righteously, and then if you have divided the students into groups or pairs or individually assigned them one of the scenarios, this can be a really great activity that's going to increase student participation. After they're done, here in the box it says invite volunteers to share their comments. Just have everybody report. Individuals can share what they've learned with the whole class. Pairs and groups can do the same thing. They can choose a spokesperson or do it as a group. The rest of the lesson, just follow the outline as it is here. There's some more great quotes on judging righteously and some really great application questions at the end. Laying the foundation for group work early in the lesson will help your pair and share, small group work, or individual student presentation go a lot better, and that will really engage your students in this lesson. Thanks for everything you do, teachers. Your sacrifice and your love for students makes a difference each and every day.